The head of CIBC says setting targets is just one step if you're trying to get more women on Canadian boards. Victor Dodig says, I could ask myself how many times during a month do I sit down with talented females that we have at CIBC who are not in executive roles today to encourage them to move forward. Candidly, he says, I need to be setting aside more time to be doing that. Dodig is one of the founding members of the 30% Club, an organization with the goal of increasing the percentage of women on corporate boards to 30% by 2020. He says companies should look at internal biases and informal corporate behavior too. A recent study by Catalyst Canada found that women were holding just over 20% of the board seats on the S&P TSX list of companies and nearly the same number of S&P 500 seats in the U.S. Time now for the big picture. Goldie Hyder, President and CEO of Hill & Knowlton Strategies, Bill Robson, President and CEO of the C.D. Howe Institute, and Armin Yalnizyan, Senior Economist at the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. Thank you three for joining us. Goldie, I begin with you. The 30% goal, do you believe it? Should we be targeting that particular goal?
It's good business. Of course we should be increasing the number of women on boards, in our C-suites. It's about leadership, it's about values, it's about culture, it's about globalization. It's good, good, good. I don't know what's bad about it.
Bill, where's the C.D. Howe Institute on this? I know that Kim Shannon's on your National Council. She's also on the Canadian Board Diversity Council. Have you written on this? Is this a part of your
Victor Dodig's talking at an event tomorrow night, so we could ask him there. But I think that the numerical targets wasn't the centerpiece of what he was saying. He was talking about actually the actions that you take to get there.
I agree. The reason I want to start with the number, though, is we can't have the conversation about what to do about it unless you're aligned to the goal.
Well, okay, so if you're asking, do I think quotas are a good idea, like numerical targets, I'd say no.
Okay.
I don't think it makes sense to say across all professions there should be certain proportions of people of this or that sex or that sexual orientation or ethnicity or anything like that. The trick is to clear away the barriers to advancement to talent and then let the best rise to the top.
Armin, measure or don't measure?
I'm really torn about this, Bruce.
Okay.
And the reason is because why not 50? Why 30? And why a quota when I know that without the quota we're just stalled in terms of bringing 50%, 51% of the workforce, 60% of the graduates from university into the pipeline of talent. So I don't know that representation, raw numbers of people on boards makes a hell of a difference, because what we're looking for is results. And as
it can't be artificial, right? It can't just be for the sake of. It can't be tokenism. It's got to be merit-driven. I think it's interesting that Victor's saying it, because to me, if it's going to come, this is one of those things that is going to come from the top down. You have to believe in it, and you have to do it for the right reasons, not just because you're being forced to do something.
Bill, I was interviewing a private equity person who was staffing a board of a company that was headed public, and he said, we can't have more women on the board because we need technical expertise, and there just aren't women who have that. Does the criteria need to change?
Well, it's interesting that you talked about an investor view of it, because I've often thought when you hear people talk about all of the outperformance that you see on corporations that have this kind of governance or that sort of structure or potentially certain types of board diversity, I'm thinking, okay, so here's a way to make money for the business-minded among the viewers. Take a stake in a company that has an all-male homogeneous board, put some diversity onto the board, sit back and rake it in. If what they're saying is true, that'll work. If what they're saying isn't true, then we have to talk a bit more about what we're trying to achieve here, because in business, you've got a fiduciary duty to your shareholders to make money.
Well, I think it's partly the glass ceiling phenomenon, but it's also the sticky floor. We've got lots of women in the pipeline, but they're not being moved up the pipeline. So the comment you're talking about reminds me of the binders of women. The idea that there's no talent out there. There's plenty of talent out there. It's not getting groomed to move up, and that's partly what Victor was talking about, is how do we promote these women up the ranks? But at the end of the day, what kind of decisions are they making? Are they making decisions that actually benefit everybody, or is it just benefiting the shareholders? That's where I'm just like, do I care if there's more women on top?
If you look at the business environment
today.
Do
you care?
Well,
because as a parent of a 5-year-old girl, I actually do care. I believe in it economically. I believe in it because I think it makes good business. But I believe in it for her because I want her to have every single opportunity that there is.
Absolutely, and I agree with that. But what I'm not clear on is if these women are actually any different than the men that are coming on. Because if all you're doing is changing the genitalia of the representation, you're not changing the class, and you're not changing the outcomes.
New thinking, right.
As the parent of both daughters and sons, who seem to be doing all right professionally, I hope, I'd say they should have equal opportunities to get together, but more constructively thinking about some of the things that Victor Dodig and others were saying. If you're in an organization where the senior leadership is male, then the types of mentoring opportunities that you might be thinking of for some of the women that are on their way up might be different. They might be more outside the organization, and that's a useful way to think about it.
What practices have any of you, I'll lob it out, what practices have you seen actually work? Because one of the things Dodig was saying was it needs to be informal, but what am I tangibly going to do? He's saying he's going to put more appointments in his calendar. That's tangible. That's something.
Well, I think one of the things, I mean, you talked about education as well. You talked about they're not qualified to do this. Well, let's make sure women are qualified to do anything and everything, because I think they're capable of doing it. As I said, it is about, from a structural perspective, you incent this behavior, but that's not the reason people should be doing it. They should be doing it because in today's world order that we're out there, I find women leaders. Take universities, for example. I've seen more university presidents now as women than men, and I say it's not by accident. The skill sets that are required, particularly around EQ versus IQ, I think women do a much better job of that. I'm in a business that's predominantly women. More than half my management team is women. I see it all the time, and I think there's a skill set that they're going to allow. If you're allowed to give them the opportunity, you will see them succeed, and that will help business. It'll be good for you. There's nothing bad that's going to come out of it.
Bill, I mean, what works? What should we be doing?
Well, I'll riff off what Goldie was saying and say that as women have advanced in a variety of fields, the binders full of women are full of talent that people should be looking at now in certain technical fields. You might run short, but the example that Goldie just gave of university presidents, that's not an easy job. That's a tough job. And someone who's had success at that is going to be very good around a table and probably bring something that others don't have.
The president of Cisco Canada is female. I heard her speak earlier this week. She said she had to look harder and farther afield to find qualified candidates, but she found them. Do you think recruiters are lazy? Or narrow-minded in their thinking?
And I think there is, though I'm not a fan of the lean-in argument, I think there is an argument that women are less ready to step up to the plate or believe that somebody else can do the job better than them. They're more self-deprecating. So I think what can be done to make this better for women is actually fill the pipeline with quotas. Target that the numbers you've got are equally male and female, black and white, homegrown and from someplace else. You want diversity of spirit to promote innovation.
But what's important, Bruce, is mentorship. We were talking about mentorship programs are very important, but they're not just about women mentoring women, but men also do it. I mean, let me tell you what I've seen, though, that is a bit controversial. Sometimes the people who stand in the way of women advancing are other women. I find it very interesting that there's a lot more competition at that level. And I would think, as a father of 3 daughters, that you want to encourage all women to support other women to be successful. And I find that an interesting dynamic.
Why'd you shake your head?
Victor said it, right?
Why'd you shake your head?
Because I think that neither men nor women have got the monopoly on being self-deprecating or being very competitive. You're going to find
I just think you're better than we are, but maybe I'm jaded at home.
Bill, I have one last question for you. We talk so much about gender diversity, but as Armin, you mentioned, it's diversity of perspectives that we want for the business. That's ethnicity, that's a whole bunch of other things. Can we have that broader debate about diversity dimensions, or do we need to have some progress on the gender front first?
Well, I'm going to go see the Blue Jays tonight, and there is
that is the biggest cop-out I've ever heard.
Talk about diversity.
It goes to a very contentious point. If we're going to have quotas, then why would we not have them for that? And the answer a lot of people would give is, well, because there's a skill set that you want, and without it, you don't have a winning team. It depends on the circumstance. But many of the things that we're talking about, I think there are ample avenues for advancement. But people do have to be watching out for them. They do have to make the effort, and there are a lot of things that can get in the way. So I think every leader in every organization wants to be looking out for that.
10 seconds.
Really? Thank you. I think you need to have half of the workplace represented in our places of decision making. Half of our voters, half of our population. We need women to be on top with the men.
Equal representation among elementary school teachers.
Thank you very much for the contrarian perspective to close with, Bill. We appreciate it. Well.